All right, and we are live. It's Friday night. It's Friday Night Fire with myself, Mike Phillips, right here, and my good buddy on my left. He's on your right. That is Matt Koenig.
Matthew.
And we are here to talk about some Bible and some Jesus and some Exodus tonight. And I was in the middle of copying and pasting stuff and some Moses. So, yeah. Anyway, we're here for another Friday Night Fire. As always, we remind you, wherever it is in my list of stuff, that our stream is sponsored by StreamYard. It is the best streaming software to get your message out across multiple platforms. It's awesome. You can do stuff like that. You can do a lot of other stuff, but we keep it very organic here on Friday nights. You get myself and Matt, and every once in a while some cool stuff on the screen. And we're going to talk about
our
cool
organs.
Our organs. So anyway, if you're interested in getting, I don't know. If you're interested in checking out a free 14-day trial of StreamYard, go to join-streamyard.com. I am sharing that right here on the screen, and plug your information in and get a free trial and check it out. It's awesome. So with that, we are going to pick up where there it goes. We're gonna pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago. So Matt and I were doing this. We're like in the gym. It's so funny because we're like so fired up and in the gym and in the moment. And we're going through the book of Exodus right now in the Bible. I read from my NLT version most likely, and then Matt reads from many versions.
Bro. Yeah, tonight I'm hung up on one specific word that shows up in Exodus 3 twice.
I can imagine. I could maybe guess, but we'll leave it. I won't know the word because you're going to talk about like the original translation and so forth.
We're talking about some Hebrew. I can't wait till we get to the part of the story where Moses' wife cuts off the kid's foreskin and touches it to his foot, because that's just all kinds of weird. That's a thing. It actually happens. It's so creepy, but it serves a purpose. Like, we ended last week with Moses and his identity crisis, right? That's where we ended it. Like,
right.
Is he like, here he leaves Egypt, he rescues the chicks from the guys that were coming, like, get out of here, quit watering your sheep.
Get out. That shows up, Vegas wedding, right? He's like, boom,
boom, hey, bring him back home to dinner. Oh, next scene, cut to scene, they're married.
So, anyway, what's awesome, that was 2 weeks ago we were having that conversation. Last week, we were off, and I was off because my son was competing at men's gymnastics regionals in Utah, which he did fantastic. He did fantastic. It's so funny. My wife and I debated, and we talked with him. He's had a rough go for about the last year and a half, where I think with the COVID and stuff, you have no fans, and so it's like, even when you're at a competition, it seems like, is it competition or is it practice, And of course, just like anything, we tell our kids, like, you got to practice just like a competition. And, at 14 years old, that certainly works.
Oh, of course. All of them buy into it when you say you practice the way you play, and they're like, right, hush up.
Yeah, but so for his age group and his division, he went out and he crushed it. He scored the highest score he's ever scored, literally in his entire career. Nice. He pulled off the vault he's been wanting to pull off. He placed first on vault in the region, again, for his age division and division. First on vault in the region. He's 6'3" in 14, mind you. He's not a typical gymnast size. And he placed first on pommel, which is traditionally an event he struggles with for the region. And so what's crazy, one of the things, and I know this isn't into the biblical portion yet, but what's crazy about it is I was thinking about it on the way back, and I was talking with somebody. I don't remember who I was speaking with. And I said, one of the unique things, because he does not have a typical gymnast frame. 14 years old, 6'3", like 170 pounds. Most gymnasts,
they're little and short.
Yeah, they're 5'6", 5'8". We had looked up tallest gymnast on record to get scholarships and so forth. But he just goes out and goes after it and pulls stuff off. And like, as parents, it's so interesting because, like, me as dad and him as mom, we're like, you can do that. You know how it is with kids, right? You're going, hey, no matter what, you can do this. Pull it off. Come on, let's go, right? You've got this. Like, we push our kids until, right? There is no stopping.
Yep.
But I was talking with somebody and I said, can you imagine all we would get accomplished if we talked to other adults the same way that we talk to our kids? If we talk to ourselves the same way that we talk to our kids? Like, hey, you just have to be able to accomplish this. And so he just goes out and does it. And he showed up. It was so much fun. So much fun. So thank you.
I love that.
Thank you very much for the time. And the reason I'm thanking Matt, so everybody out there in the world knows, it's because, Matt and I have been consistent about doing this.
There. No, I'm sure.
Yeah, coach.
Because I've been coaching his son. I'm an Olympic gymnast. Look at this frame.
That's right. So
what's up, Jordan?
What's up, Jordan? How are you, buddy? And because like that meant a lot to me that both of us were exploring through the book, and we want to be able to share and have an impact on people that are on you that are watching this or listening later, if you're tuning in later and so forth, and to have that time off to spend just father-son time, because it was just he and I that traveled, and really connect, and then just watch him show up. Like, dude, that was an absolute blessing. It was awesome. So
I'm so excited to hear about it, man. That's just great. And,
how's your week? How's your 2 weeks been?
It's been good. Hey, well, sorry that it's the wrong video, Sam, but thanks for jumping in for a second.
Sam, I'm just going to point out, Sam, it might be the right video. Maybe God's speaking to you right now, bro.
True. We're going to talk about Exodus, not foreskin today. That's like in the coming weeks. We're going to talk about that because that happened. But today we're going to talk about
I don't remember the book of foreskin in Exodus.
No, but it is a pretty fascinating thing. So off script today because there is no script. But what's really cool. So I've been just digging. Dude, I'm a nerd. I've been diving into this Bema discipleship Bema podcast. Marty Sullivan, and he's got Jewish roots, and he digs really deep on. The Bema podcast, it teaches the Eastern perspective on biblical writing, right? Because we have a very different way of studying the Bible. We think, fact A, 2 + 2 = 4, but with God it's like miracles, so 2 + 2 = 17. But we're very much like, listen, here's how we know the Bible's true, because A, B, C, and D, right? And we're very fact-oriented learners in a Western mindset. We're very, very similar to the Greeks in a lot in that way, but in the Eastern tradition, we talk about proving God exists. In the Eastern tradition, they feel God, and that's how they know God exists. So as we look through the story, there are so many weird things that I never knew or understood. I'm like, wait, why did God is angry and he's going to kill Moses, and then Moses' wife cuts the kid's foreskin off and touches it to his foot, and then God what is going on there? And so the spoiler alert, little teaser for upcoming episode. It really speaks to the fact that how we ended last week. We've got Moses, who's an Israelite, found in a Moses basket, raised as an Egyptian.
Right.
So he's raised as an Egyptian, but every day, he's like we talked about last week, he's likely struggling with survivor's guilt, right? Because he was supposed to be killed. All the other boys were. Moses wasn't. Now Moses is raised by the most powerful man in the world. He's probably got his own Hebrew servants. He goes out, kills an Egyptian that's beating on the Hebrews, right? He tries to break up a quarrel between two Hebrews. They're like, "What are you going to do? Kill us like the Egyptian guy?" And then Moses runs away, and he's in the desert. And then when we fast forward, what we see is this. Moses was obviously raised as a Hebrew for 3 years. So he was circumcised. That's how the daughter of Pharaoh knew he was a Hebrew baby, right, floating on the river in a basket. Wasn't because the Charlton Heston movie, oh, look, it's a Hebrew blanket. No, it's because he had his foreskin cut off. Duh. So you fast forward, though, God's calling Moses to go free the people. And then what do we see? Moses didn't even circumcise his own son. So Moses wasn't living as a Hebrew. He wasn't identifying as a Hebrew. So much so that the command to circumcise his son on the 8th day, he had not done. Which is, part of what we learn from the Hebrew perspective. It's Moses had this identity crisis that he was struggling with. And so that's what happens with the whole foreskin deal. But we'll get even deeper on how the foot is actually often used as a reference to not to talk about your foot. You know how we make jokes the bigger the foot, right? So is it did she actually touch it to his foot? And the original, a lot of biblical scholars, Hebrew scholars, talk about that wasn't his foot. She touched it to. It was kind of comparing, look, see, it's gone from ears. It's gone. It's gone from his
Interesting.
feet. Yeah, it's really weird too because it makes it even creepier to think she touched it to his So, anyways, we're going to talk about some cool stuff in Exodus. So there's... You
Hey, if you're just joining us, welcome to Foreskin episode.
We were talking about Moses' kids' foreskin.
So also, one other good thing is we're getting into Exodus 3. I'm going to share this early. Matt has got a book coming out next Thursday.
It's available now in the pre-launch. So you actually would get it today if you buy it on Kindle. So it is available. So
here's what you do. It's secret book launch, which is not so. Matt's terrible at keeping secrets. So if you go to 633.today/secret book launch, and then you can get a Kindle copy for 99 cents. You leave a review, you get the audiobook for free. The hook is that's what I didn't get a chance to plug in yet. The email, I think you can do support@jesusway.xyz. I'm sure if you got one there that they and so forth. Just screenshot it, say, hey man, I left a review.
And Mike Phillips wrote the foreword to my book, and Mike Phillips also recorded the audio for the foreword to my book. So you would love it, and you should get it.
So go check that out.
It's going to be the best book you read this year in under 2 hours.
I think it's awesome, man. It is a really well-written, genuine, just account of.
And Mike doesn't even get paid for saying that. So.
I don't get paid. So with that, Exodus 3, do we just want to, you want to do like we did last week? We'll just start at the first verse.
Do you want to read it? Do you just want to read through Exodus?
Just read and how about you just stop me when we want to have a talk about it. So
I think that is an absolutely delightful idea.
So Exodus 3, 1. So it's Moses and the burning bush. One day Moses was tending the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, which from last episode was after he had the shotgun wedding. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Sinai, the mountain of God.
Pause. So just for the others, if you're reading different translations, it may say Horeb. And just to understand, Sinai is the mountain, Horeb is the region that the mountain is in. And this is going to be important as we go through Exodus later, because what I learned today on my 6-mile accidental walk is that the mountain there, when we think mountain, we think of mountains like this, right? Like there's a slow peak. But if you were to go to the area that's Horeb, we would see a lot more like Arizona, like straight up and down. So later when we read about Moses striking the rock, it's Mount Sinai that he's striking, but one would be like, well, how far up did he have to walk? Like, what's the slope? It's like a wall. So it's a small thing, but it's going to matter in later episodes. Okay, sorry, go ahead. So he gets to Sinai.
Okay. So he gets to Sinai, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement. Though the bush was engulfed in flames, it didn't burn up. This is amazing, Moses said to himself. Why isn't that bush burning up? I must go see it. It's... the way that they write in some of this is so it does make me smile. So
it does.
We're on chapter 3, verse 4. When the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses, here I am." Moses replied, "Do not come any."
Stop there, though. Let's look at this because let's look at verse 2 and verse 4 because there's something that stands out there that's a little interesting.
Okay, so verse 2, there the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of a bush. Moses stared in amazement, though the bush was engulfed in flames, didn't burn up. And then 4 is when the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses," and then "Here I am," Moses replied.
So who what does verse 2 say? Who was talking to our man Moses?
Is this a trick question? Is this a trick
question? No. Just like who does it say in verse 2?
There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire. So an angel was speaking to him.
Okay.
Right.
So, but then immediately, verse 4 says that what happened? It says when the Lord saw.
God called to him.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing to look at when we see here. It's like, was it God in the bush? Was it the angel in the bush? Who is the angel of the Lord in the bush? Like, this is an interesting thing to look at. Because some people say the angel of the Lord is who? Some imply this is Jesus in the Old Testament. I just think it's a unique thing to point out. I don't know why Moses wrote it this way, because Moses authored Exodus, but it's an interesting thing to point out that it says the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame, and as Moses looked, he says, I got to go over and look at this remarkable sight. Why isn't it bring up? And then it says, when the Lord saw he had gone over, God called out to him from the bush, Moses, Moses. There's another story in the Bible where God calls out to somebody, and it's in the book before this, when someone is hiding.
When he calls out to, when he calls out to Adam, and they're like, or is it Adam? And says, well, where are you? Oh, well, we're naked. And he's like, how do you know that? Right?
Yeah, so we've got an interesting thing here that we see, like almost like a callback, if you will, like to the Garden of Eden, where something, sin enters the world, Adam and Eve hide, and God, who can see everything anyway, walks in and goes,
he already knows.
Hey, where are you at? And the interesting thing is we see the angel of the Lord appear to Moses, and then it says, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, which
Moses, and then, well, it is like a throwback.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the throwback too is look at Moses' response. Here I am, like it's identical, right? Here I am.
Thank you.
And so, but here's the interesting thing. Here's one of the things as you point this out. What's very interesting to me, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire. It's almost like, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and like you're saying, okay, well, if it was Jesus, the prequel, if you will, people understand prequels today. Like what if that is if that's the predecessor, the prequel to Jesus, if it's the Holy Spirit, or what if it's like there's not definition here when they write about the stuff. The interesting thing is, what if it is like that? What if it's like God's bellboy, right? Like,
well,
the
word angel in this is malak, or malauk is how it's pronounced, but it
right.
literally means like a messenger, a deputy, specifically of God. So we're led to believe first there's an angel in the bush that like lures Moses in, and then God is calling out to him. And yes, just like Adam, Moses is like, "Here I am," as though God can't find him. It's an interesting thing that Moses, being the author of both of these stories, there's always a purpose when we see the same words and the same phrasing used.
Right,
and it's something that it means that the writer is telling us, pay attention to this part of the story for some reason. And I think we'll get some more reasoning as we read on, but it's important to point out, like, here we are seeing almost the exact same thing take place that just took place in Genesis,
right?
In the creation of the world. So sorry. Okay, go ahead.
This is what it's about. We're just going through and talking. Hey, and by the way, for anybody who is watching, or if you're listening later on the podcast, and you have questions, listen, DM Matt or I. We're always open for a conversation. Throw a comment in the sidebar. I know it seems like as we're going through this exploring of the Bible, right? One of the things that I found interesting is, and because we've got a decent audience that comes in and out, but I do find it interesting that as we've taken on this new format, people are listening and absorbing it. That's how I take it. It's actually pretty cool. But if you have questions, jump in, or grab a Bible and jump in, right?
Grab a Bible for sure.
So. Where are we? 3:5. Don't come any closer, the Lord warned. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. When Moses heard this, he covered his face because he was afraid to look at God.
All right, stop.
I knew I was going to say. I knew he was going to. Did you guys see how I did that? I knew he was going to stop me there. We're not even going to make it through this book tonight. Just so you guys know,
we might not. But what are you noticing in verse 5 that stands out to you? Because there's two things that stand out to me, but I want to see if they're the same things.
I mean, him pointing out the holy ground, and when he's telling him stop, and then, hey, you're on holy ground.
So now, hold on a minute. Before this, when was this ground holy, right? Like, we don't see anything else talking about this ground being holy before this. But where did it say Moses was at with the sheep again?
Where did it say Moses was
Yeah,
at
like
with it?
in the first verse, where is Moses
Yeah,
leading
so
this
going
flock?
back, he led the flock into the wilderness and came to Sinai.
Now, here's the interesting thing, okay? So
At least in this translation.
Yeah. Okay, so Moses is shepherding the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led him to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb. So there's a couple things. One, when Moses fled, he was wandering where?
In the
In
wilderness?
the wilderness. So this is the same area that Moses hid before. So Moses is familiar with this area. What's up, Rich? So
What's up,
Moses
dude?
has been in this area. He spent quite a bit of time in this area when he fled Egypt. So why would Moses lead the flock back to the same place that he was hiding before? That's something to point out. It's like we get told this place is Horeb, but we don't know why it's holy. But we're going to learn later, where does Moses meet with God? On what Mount what?
Mount Sinai.
So this is our introduction. We're going to learn Horeb is this area, but we're learning right now. God is saying this is holy. Moses doesn't even get what's going to take place later on in the Exodus, that this is the very place that he's going to keep communing with God and get all of this stuff. So the place Moses
So
hid,
there's that's the prequel too, guys, if you didn't catch that.
So the place that Moses took refuge from Egypt, where he was hiding from Egypt, is now the place that God is going to show up, and Moses can take refuge in God. So this is a really, really interesting, just a really interesting thing in the story that we learn is like, okay, what makes this ground holy? Like, this is the same ground you were hiding from the Egyptians in. What's good about this? But God is using the place that Moses identified with a place to go hide from Egypt and be safe. God is now shifting that identity to know this is the place that you meet with me. Where
That's interesting.
I'm going to bring
That's good.
all of my people to safety
Like-
and underneath me.
Right here. Yeah. No, that's good,
it's good.
man.
And then, but what's the other thing that stands out? Because there's another callback we hear.
You know, I want to point this out. If you guys are watching right now, I am thankful that Matt asks mostly easy questions. Because we don't meet prior to this. And so at least he sets me up. So it looks like I know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, what was the next question?
No, what's the other thing that stands out that's weird in that, though? What else do you notice that happened that we've seen before in Scripture that Moses wrote? In that verse.
I don't know. You tell me on this one.
When after God tells Moses who he is, what did Moses do?
Covered his face.
Yeah, Moses hid from God, right?
He immediately...
Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Where else did we see that happen in Scripture? Where else did we see someone hide from God? We were just talking about it.
Yeah,
right?
Genesis. Beginning of Genesis.
So the interesting thing is we've got Moses, who we've already talked through last week, how he's having an identity crisis. He's hiding he's not living as a Hebrew, right? And now we've got Moses, the God of Moses' lineage here, shows up to meet with Moses, and Moses hides. So Moses has been living a life of sin, we could say, a life apart from God, and now he's hiding from God as a result. Adam entered into a life of sin, and what was the first thing he did? So when God showed up to be with him,
he's like, he's gonna know. Yeah, because that's gonna work. It's one of the. It's like when we're the 6-year-old, right? And it's like, hey, if I close my eyes, you can't see me. Can't see me.
I love it.
That's exactly what it is. Okay, throwback.
Right, so
I'm gonna keep reading. You're gonna keep expanding, unless you want to read.
No, verse 7, and I want you to read verse 7. Just read 7, 8, and 9, and let's stop after that, because this is the word, the crux of this tonight is right.
And it's okay, I can read your mind, so I know when to stop, because most of the time, but unless I read really fast. Okay, 7, 8, and 9. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. So he saw the oppression of the people in Egypt, but he can't see you if you hide your... Anyway.
But he can't see if you cover your eyes.
I've heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I'm aware of their suffering, so I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. I'm going to finish this one too. Now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people you must lead my people Israel out of Egypt.
Awesome. Okay. So this is the fun part. So
Hi,
when
Cassie.
we hear the
Nice
story,
to see you.
What's up, Cassie? So when we hear the story about the Exodus, I don't know how you've been taught it growing up, but in the few times that I went to church or all the movies, I hear about how God's anger, right? Because of God's anger, he was going to punish Egypt. Okay? Oh, Bobby Lou. That's my boy, Bobby Lou Vanos.
Nice.
Down in Texas. We talked on the phone for like an hour earlier, man. I love Bobby Lou. So all the times we hear about like Old Testament God, wrathful, angry God.
Right.
New Testament God, Jesus, love. He's fixing, he's protecting us from angry God, right? Like that's what we hear. But this is where we're going to learn very clearly that this is the same loving God that rescued us. Because the first thing he said in verse 7, he says, I have observed the misery of my people in Egypt, and I've heard them crying out because of their oppressors. There is a word here. This is where I'm going to get...
This is where Matt gets all Hebrew and Greek. And
So, well, there's a word here that Marty Sullivan was talking about in Bema that I never identified like how this ties in. But there's a word called sa'akah. And it's the crying out. But this is a different kind of cry, because we don't see this when it says in Exodus 2, like the people cried out, God heard their groaning. But this version of crying out, when he says, I have heard them crying out because of their oppressors. This is a tza'akah. This is a cry that when this happens in the Bible, and we will see this, we see this in Exodus 3, Exodus 9, Exodus 11, Exodus 12, Exodus 22. Every time we see the tza'akah, the crying out, we see God answering it. Every time we see this cry of the oppressed, we see God step in and go, I'm going to do something. And this is what I love, dude. Like this, for the people that are like, well, your God can't cure COVID, or your God this. It's like what we see through the history of God in the Old Testament. When we see the Exodus, this isn't God going, Egypt's not living the way I want, so I'm going to send some plagues and wipe them. This is the beginning of God going, I have heard the cry of the oppressed, and I'm not going to let this happen.
Here I come.
We see it later in the story too, where it says like, if you take a widow's coat and she cries out, I will hear her cry. I will hear her sakah. Like this is the type of cry that does not go unanswered by God. And now we saw it again in verse 9. Now another thing we read about in the Bible, right? Is like when something gets repeated, it matters. So in the way Moses wrote this, verse 9 says, so because of their sakah for help has come to me, and I have also seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. Therefore, go. I'm sending you to Pharaoh so that you may lead my people out of Egypt. So how does that matter to us today? There are times that we call out to God. We're like, God, I need you to get me out of this. And God's like, dude, I have equipped you to get out of this. Like, this is not like I'm with you. I'm with you in the storm. But this isn't something that requires, and this is eisegesis, right? Like this is not something I'm pulling out of the Bible. This is me saying a lesson we can learn, right? This is not written down, but it's an important one. There are some times where we go, oh God, I need you to do this. And God's like, I just need you to make better decisions, Matthew.
Well, here's the perfect, here's the thing. This is the perfect segue. And I have a lighter version than Matt. Because but here's the thing that I think people wouldn't get. When we're reading an English translation,
come on,
the word cry is cry, right? Oh, they cried out to me. They cried out to me. They cried. There are lots of places in the Bible where someone cries out. So I think it's so relevant that you're bringing up, Matt, that it's like, hey, sa'akah specifically is a cry of the oppressed. It's not just somebody crying out. And so here's where we go with Bible Light, if you will. I posted the other day, I shared it the other day, that it's like when we're crying out to God saying, oh my gosh, God, send me a cake, right? And he sends you the flour, the butter, the eggs, the sugar, and an oven, and lands you in a kitchen, and you go, I asked for a cake, dude, and split. That's not the oppressed, right?
No, and we're going to see this so much throughout Exodus when they say, when it says that God let them leave Egypt with cattle, with stuff to make bread, but not what the Egyptian needs. He sent them with a buffet. Okay, a Las Vegas, like the Bechamel buffet in Caesar's Palace. They leave Egypt with livestock, with food, with everything. They've got meat, they've got bread, they've got all they need. And they literally say to Moses, well, geez, why is God going to give us some meat? And it's like,
you got to...
Like, he's been raining bread from heaven for you to cook, like manna for you. Enough for everyone, and like there are things that we will learn in Exodus that so represent today where, like, when people say, well, why isn't God doing this? It's like, oh, you mean why isn't he doing what you demanded and commanded that you want right now? And we learn in this story of Exodus that God does answer when God's people need him. And I'll bring this to what we've talked about before on the show. When my friend, stage 4 cancer, was going to die, I'll tell you what, there was a cry out to God for him, right? Like, we can't lose, like, we can't lose him. Now, it wasn't a tzedakah, no one was being oppressed by this, but when we cry out to God, and God knows what we need when we need it, God shows up. But now flip the script. There's sometimes where we say, God, we want this healing. We're like, why doesn't he bring healing? And I think we've even talked about, like, the guy that had been at the gate, right, or down by the pool for like years, right? And nobody's putting him in the pool. Nobody's helping him. Nobody's doing stuff. And it's like, why did it take that long? Well, because there was an appointed time. Jesus brought healing so certain people could see the healing. Right? So we don't always know why, but what we learned so far in Exodus is that God says, when my people are truly being oppressed and they cry out, I'm going to show up. And I think if
and let me ask you this
today, they might go, but I'm oppressed. But are you? But
no.
Are you? And no, but
trust
I'm saying,
me,
like,
that I would bet you
that say this all day long, right? Like, I'm being oppressed. I might think if my income is at a certain level, I'm being oppressed. And maybe I am, but have I cried out to God, or have I tried to go fight people because of it? I don't know. So we've got to look at Scripture, like, it was written for the people it was written for at the time, but we have it today because we can learn lessons from their successes and their failures, right?
100%. I'm going to keep reading.
Okay,
We're 35 minutes in. But wait, what?
Oh, crap. Okay. Okay, so let's go.
Here's one of the things I want. One I want to get to is the spotlight that's in my Bible too. So
what verse is that?
It's not a. It's 3:11, 3:13. It talks about some in verses 4. So we're coming to
perfect.
It. Just
let's go through verse 14 tonight, and then we can pick up the rest next week.
Well, I mean, we've got time. I got time if you got time.
All right, then let's go.
But Moses. So here I want to go back through this because he says, "Now go, for I'm sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people to Israel out of Egypt." Verse 11. But Moses protested to God, "Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt?" God answered, "I will be with you, and this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain." There's the prequel. But Moses protested, "If I go to the people of Israel and tell them the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, 'What is his name?' Then what should I tell them?" I'm going to keep going because I know what's coming from you.
Maybe you do.
God replied to Moses, "I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you." God also said to Moses, "Say this to the people of Israel, Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me to you. This is my eternal name, my name to remember for all generations." So I'll pause there.
Yeah, so let's look at verse 11. Okay, so God tells him, I am sending you. He said, verse 9, "So because the Israelites' cry for help has come to me, I have also seen the Egyptians oppress them. Therefore, go. I am sending you to Pharaoh so that you may lead my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." But Moses asked God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring these people out of Egypt?" So here's God going, "Hey, go do this." And Moses is going, "Who am I?" Why would Moses ask that question to God, do you think? Like, what do you think? What about that question strikes you as interesting?
I think even right now, to compare it to now, I think oftentimes people ask that question. Anytime we're faced with a difficulty, the first thing is like, well, what equipped me? Who am I to do this? I think that right now plays to human nature. Like, who am I?
Very accurate. And Moses, in his life, he was only in his Hebrew home till he was 3, right? So he would have been circumcised as a Hebrew. Likely reminded every day he wasn't quite Egyptian enough, right?
Right.
But if Moses was raised in an Egyptian home, what God...
Hey, Bobby Lou's daughter's a cute little girl there.
Right? She sure is.
Super relevant topic.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What do you, being raised in Pharaoh's home, what God would Moses have been taught about?
Gods. What
right?
gods?
So Moses wouldn't have been raised in a household that taught him, here's the Hebrew God, and when he tells you to do, you do.
You do.
Right? There was obviously something about what happened, but it was interesting that Moses saw a bush on fire. Like, what? Like, this is a trip. Off script, Joe Rogan likes to say that it's because there are theories that the bush was like mescaline or whatever, or something like that. So like the bush was on fire, which made him stoned, which opened up his third eye and he was able to like see, which I think is a hilarious, but albeit scientific attempt to try and scientifically talk about the supernatural. So it was kind of funny that he brought it up because I was like, you don't even believe the Bible. And it's interesting, though, that you're trying to talk about maybe proving. And then Joe Rogan was like, like he might have seen God. Like, if you can open your third. I'm like, okay, bro, stick to MMA. I love you. But here's the interesting thing.
He gets sideways sometimes, man.
Yeah, so Moses, and I think it's something we, like, there's a level of authority that Moses acknowledges. Like, he's having this conversation with a bush on fire and God speaking to him through it. But Moses is going, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Let's go back to that identity crisis Moses was having. On one hand, he doesn't feel he has any authority over the Hebrew people, right? He doesn't even identify as a Hebrew. But by the same token, he goes, I don't have authority with Pharaoh, right? So here's the crazy part, though. The Hebrew kid who was spared by the grace of God gets raised by... Is there another Hebrew person who would have a better shot at having a conversation with Pharaoh? Like,
no, none.
Who would be more qualified than Moses, even if you strip away the fact that God's with him? Right?
So that's where I want to hit this, because I'm going to read all 5 of these, because there's a point in here, in my study Bible, that says, it's a spotlight, and it says the reluctant candidate. So it outlines 5 different verses, some of which we are not at yet, but I'm still going to share those because they're coming up in Exodus 4. So it talks about there's 5 responses from Moses, 5 pushbacks from Moses, excuses that he makes from Moses, and God has 5 answers immediately. So verse 11, where he says, who, me? I'm nobody, right? Who am I to go? God's response in verse 12, I'll go with you. Right? Next, in 3:13, people will ask me hard questions like, so who is this God that sent you? God says, tell him my name. So then you move on through 4. He says, nobody's going to listen to me. God says, here are 2 miracles to get their attention. He says, I'm a lousy public speaker, right? God says, who made your mouth in the first place? Come on, just send somebody else. Okay, you can go communicate through your brother Aaron. Now that's enough. Get moving. Right. So there's an immediate. That's the other thing that I think is pretty cool when we were talking about this, is for every, and again, relating it to today, right now, me, you, other people. Like, we often will we're just like Moses. We have so many excuses. Like, well, who am I to go do this? God's like, I got you. Right. Well, I can't do that because I'm not good at blank. And God said, well, I'm not good at doing this. And God says, well, who do you think gave you the ability anyway? Try it, right? So there's always a constant, like, God is constant when it comes to this sort of stuff. And I think we get so wrapped up and tied up in thinking that we are so powerful in that sense that it's like, well, no, this is because but for every excuse we have, God has an answer.
And here's 2 things that I find interesting as well, because
I know that's off topic.
No, it's on topic completely, because everything Moses is telling him, there are a couple of things that stand out. There's something that God never does here, and I think it's just as important to acknowledge what God didn't do. God didn't say to Moses, yeah, you've got all these shortcomings, but I'll fill in the gaps. God didn't feel the need to even affirm the areas that Moses fell short in.
No.
God didn't go, yeah, I know that you haven't circumcised your kid yet, dude. I know that you don't identify and don't have your place in the world. Notice that never once does God even give acknowledgement to the potential that Moses has shortcomings. God knows Moses is the man for the job, regardless
Absolutely.
of who Moses was and is, and regardless of the fact that he's killed a guy, and went and fled and hid. Regardless of all of it, God doesn't even address the complaints as though there's validity, because God knows Moses is good enough for God to work. But there's two things that happen here. In verse 11, Moses, his first piece of pushback is, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? Basically, what qualifies me to speak to Pharaoh? Right. So his first concern is, and this goes back to his identity crisis, how can I speak to the Egyptian guy? How can I speak to the leader of Egypt? Who am I that he's going to listen to? And when God says, hey, I'm going to go with you, and this will be the sign of the one who sent you, when you bring everyone out of Egypt, you'll all worship God at this mountain, right?
Yep.
But then the next thing Moses, and this is the interesting part, and this speaks to that identity crisis, he says, but if I go to the Israelites and say, the God of, notice this, he doesn't say our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
If I go to the Israelites and say, the God of your ancestors has sent me, and they say, what's his name? What should I tell him? This doesn't seem like just an excuse. While it is, him trying to avoid it, it also seems like Moses is going, hey, man, these folks aren't going to listen to me. When I tell them that their God sent me, who do I tell them you are? This is a big deal in the story, because here's the guy who's reminded that he's a Hebrew his whole life,
mm-hmm.
but he doesn't even know his own God.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know you. That's
a big
wild.
deal to identify in the story. He's going, I'm scared of Pharaoh. Why would he listen to me? And then he's going, these people don't have respect for me either. And who am I going to tell them sent me to tell them to come out? And that's a big deal, because God didn't say, well, let me tell you, Moses, the 5 steps to becoming a Hebrew, and then I'll let you in the club. Right? He didn't do the Christian thing, listen, who is this God, right? Who's this God that I'm supposed to get to know? He doesn't go, well, listen, the Romans road is, or first you give your life to Christ, and then you take a bath, and then you get to know him. He doesn't do any of that. What he says is he acknowledges, it's like he recognizes that, Moses, you don't know me. But instead of going, you don't know me, he just goes, all right, I'll tell you what to say to him, Moses.
Yeah, do
I
this.
am who I am, right? I am who I am. This is what you say to the Israelites. I am has sent you. God also says to Moses, say this to the Israelites. And then he gives Moses the lineage that Moses probably wasn't familiar with. Because remember, this is book 2 in our story, so there wasn't a story. Moses wrote all the first 5 books. There wasn't written stuff to share. This was all word of mouth throughout their whole lives, written on walking sticks. There wasn't a Bible, there was no Torah, there was no scripture. So Moses, how would Moses know who he was? Only through stories of other Hebrews. But guess what Moses wasn't sitting in on? Stories of other Hebrews.
The Hebrew stories.
So how would Moses even know the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob? How would he know any of it? He wouldn't. And that makes perfect sense for Moses to be nervous and frightened. And a lot of times I think Moses gets a bad rap as we read through this part of Exodus. We're like, dude, God sent you. How do you push back on God, bro? He sent you. That's God. But Moses wouldn't have known this God. He wouldn't have known him at all. He was raised in a polytheistic home.
Yep.
Under an Egyptian. So it's pretty fascinating stuff right there. And then later we get all the rest of the story, which we can read through if you just want to end it here.
Yeah. No, we can just.
The things. Yeah. Let's just you go ahead and read.
We got a few verses left. So he says, he told me, I've been watching closely. I see how Egyptians are treating you. I've promised to rescue you from your oppression in Egypt. I will lead you to a land flowing with milk and honey, and the land where the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites now live. The elders of Israel will accept your message. Then you and the elders must go to the king of Egypt and tell him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So please, I just lost my lost my spot. So please let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness to offer sacrifices to the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. This is a pretty cool part. Like this part here, this last, we'll call it a paragraph, but from 19 to the end here. So he says, but I know the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So I will raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles. I'd say miracles are in quotes now, right? Miracles among them. Then at last he'll let you go, and I will cause the Egyptians to look favorably on you. They will give you gifts when you go, so you'll not leave empty-handed. Every Israelite woman will ask for articles of silver and gold and fine clothing from her Egyptian neighbors, and from the foreign women in their houses you will dress your sons and daughters with these, stripping the Egyptians of their wealth.
This makes me so. This is just good, dude.
So what
Verse
stands
18.
out to you about that? Verse 18.
Oh, yes. I'll tell you what stands out to me, Mike. Number one, God is confident. He says they'll listen to what you say. So God knows when you say these things to the Hebrew people, they're going to be able to identify with them. And they're going to recognize it's me talking, right? But
Absolutely.
Here's the interesting part. The last part of verse 18. Now, please let us go on a 3-day trip into the wilderness so that we may sacrifice to our Lord. How long is that trip? How many years are they wandering around? Did God just tell Moses to go lie to Pharaoh?
Yeah. I did. Sorry, I didn't know where you were going with that.
No, that's a whole entire episode. But the interesting thing is, and I think Marty Solomon was talking about this, was that he basically was saying. There's a couple of trains of thought. One, hey, let us go worship our God for 3 days and make sacrifices, right? Like maybe that was a legit request. Like, let us go worship our God, right? Let us go give honor to our God. But Pharaoh's going to say no, and that's where all the stuff comes, and then it's going to be we're leaving forever. Or God didn't owe Pharaoh honesty because Pharaoh's been oppressing his people, right?
Interesting.
So God's like, just go say this because that'll get you out of there, and no matter what happens afterwards. You don't know, but it's interesting. But verse 20, this is
maybe that, and like you said, maybe that was the original intent. Hey, go tell him we're going to have 3 days, and then he's like, hey, changed my mind.
So verse 20, and then we got to wrap it up.
Yep.
I know not only because of the time, but also because Dara knows it's 30 minutes, and I know she's planning dinner, and then it's longer. But
30-ish.
Verse 20, but when I stretch out my hand and strike Egypt, that part of the sentence. So if you look at Pharaoh and how he's represented, he's always got something in his hand. Okay, and do you know what that is that he's always holding? If you look at pictures,
scepter.
Yeah, or a shepherd's crook even too. It's usually like both crossed, right? So when Pharaoh would stretch out his hand over Egypt, right, he would command things. So this visual is a very important one because God knew Moses would understand the meaning of that. See, Marty Sullivan talks about this. There's two things going on here. There's there are two kingdoms. This is a tale of two kingdoms: empire and shalom. Right? Empire and shalom. Egypt is empire. When Pharaoh stretches out his hand, he makes decrees, shows his power, and God is saying, "I'm going to show you that real power isn't oppression. Real power is freedom, freeing people from oppression. Real power is." Like saving people, loving people. So as we see this wrap up, we do see God give Moses something that he can identify with to say,
grab a hold of.
You can recognize when this happens, what it means. Like the Pharaoh says, we're going to go wipe out whatever. God's saying, when I stretch out my hand over this is what's going to happen. And now Moses is starting to at least get a visual of like, oh, this God gets it. Like now I get it. The way this God's talking to me now, I get it. So there's so many cool little things, man, that I genuinely didn't know. In all the times I've studied Exodus, I'm just like, oh, God's letting Moses know he's about to let the Egyptians have it because he's angry at them. And it's not about the anger as much as it's about the rescue that God's putting Moses out. So Sakah, cry out, right there. The Sakah we've seen twice. And God says, I'm coming for you guys. So that's Exodus 4 will be a good place to pick up next week.
Absolutely, and we will pick up from Exodus 4. Quick reminder for everybody, you can go to... first off, before we just try and sell again, but you go 633.today/secret book launch to get Matt's new book. Thank you for everybody who, we value your time, and we hope you're gaining something out of, it's kind of an open Bible study, exploring the Bible here on Friday nights on Friday Night Fire. You can also go there, get a Kindle copy for 99 cents, leave a review. You can get the audiobook for free. The audiobook is awesome. I've not listened to all of it, but what's the time frame? It's a couple hours. Yeah.
Under 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Under 2 hours for the whole book.
So
it's not a long one.
No, but it's a good one. So you should check that out. And we appreciate you guys. Do me a favor, if you would, share this episode out. If you know somebody that's wanting to get into and understand the Bible, we're walking through Exodus the next several weeks. We're going to continue this because both of us enjoy this part of the Bible, and we'd love to have you join us on this journey. And until we see you next time, I'm going to go ahead and take us out. So share this, like it, love it. Subscribe to both of our YouTube channels. Mine's youtube.com/with Mike. Matt's is youtube.com/JesusWay. And we would love to
sing Tim McGraw, by the way, when you're like, I like it, I love it,
I like
want
it,
some more of it. I don't know why, but it happened.
What's
up, Matt Winiata, all the way in New Zealand? Our Kiwi brother, we're praying for Cam, bro. Prayed for Cam before, his son. We love you, man, and we got you, dude. God's got you, man.
So, you know why Tim McGraw sings that song?
Yeah, because he's in love with Faith Hill, and that's
no, it's so you don't have to.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
That's quick. I get my guys at work.
That was well done. I do a better Bob Seger than Tim McGraw. I'm not gonna
absolutely. Thanks again, everybody. Until we see you next week. Tune in next Friday night? Oh, that's my alarm. Next Friday night, 5 Pacific, 6 Mountain, 8 Eastern, and we will plan on seeing you back here then. God bless you.
Love you guys. Love you, Mike. Appreciate you. We'll see you next week.
Love you, buddy.